Welcome everybody. My name is Margot Betti and I work for APREM, the Agency for the Promotion of the European Research, which is one of the partners of project PICASSO. So before going to the core of our content of today, I will give you just a very brief presentation of PICASSO, of the project. PICASSO is a project funded by the European Commission and in particular by the DG Connect, the Directorate General for Content, Communication Network and Technologies, and it's actually heading to its end. It lasts 30 months. It started in 2016 and it will end at the end of June. It targets specifically the EU-US ICT research, development and innovation communities and network, and in particular the industrial sector and policymakers. The main aim of PICASSO is fostering collaboration between the two sides of the Atlantic regarding those strategic ICT technology that help addressing our main current societal challenges, as well as industrial needs. In doing this, PICASSO addresses also the related policy framework, especially analyzing and the harmonization needs and issues between the EU and the US. But how does PICASSO operate? It is organized into 4 expert groups, comprising more than 25 experts from the EU and the US across all expert groups. We have 3 expert groups dealing with technology, and in particular 5G networks, big data, and the Internet of Things and cyber physical systems. And we have a 4th expert group addressing horizontal policy issues. In particular, it has dealt so far with privacy and data protection, cybersecurity, standards, spectrum, and digital communities. PICASSO has issued a number of practical and information tools that are all available on its website. So we encourage you to visit it and read our work. Of particular interest, we have the Opportunity Report. It describes the major results that were obtained by the discussion of the different expert groups, and in particular identifies technology themes and promoted collaboration mechanisms that have been identified as being provided for the EU-US collaboration. On the policy side, we have also drafted 5 different policy briefs on the issues mentioned above, which are the most important at the moment. Moreover, the project offers a number of tools and services, such as, for example, Crossroads, an app which provides quick access to ICT activities in the EU and US, as well as you can find all the recording of our webinars and also the contact for a dedicated help desk. Finally, I draw your attention on the fact, here, like here you see the website and the page to access all the different webinars. As a final remark, I draw your attention on the fact that PICASSO is organizing its final event called the 2nd Annual Transatlantic Symposium on ICT and Policy, and it will be held on the 18th and 19th of June 2018 in Washington. So for the moment, save the date. We will make available more details on the agenda very soon on our website. And now I've finished and I will leave the floor to Vasilis from ATC Innovation Lab in Greece, who will guide you to the core of this webinar. Thank you, Vasilis.
Hello from myself as well. Nice to have you all here attending this webinar between EU participants from the PICASSO project and our US counterparts from the hubs. It's been a great pleasure also having you as speakers in this seminar, and of course Andreas from BDVA as well. Now I will need a couple of minutes before passing the floor to Andreas, who will give you information about the BDVA's activities and regarding big data of course, and future opportunities following to my presentation. But I would like to get some. I need some time to give you a small update on what we do as the PICASSO expert group, big data expert group, of course, and what is our structure and our activities so far. So the expert group of PICASSO, its main aim is to establish strong links between big data structures from the EU and the US. The examples are, tangible examples are the EU, of course. The EU counterpart of big data is BDVA, and from the US you can consider as equivalent, let's say, the 4 US hubs, big data hubs. So we have tried to, our main aim was to, of course, establish this kind of links between all these different structures and try to actually boost and enhance collaboration between us by establishing a communication channel, by initiating some joint activities, and try to define a roadmap for future collaboration and other activities that can take place in the near future between the two regions. Sorry about this. So the structure of the PICASSO expert group, the PICASSO expert group is as it follows. My head Nikos is the chair of the expert group of the PICASSO Big Data Expert Group, and we have a number of participants from various organizations around Europe. Andreas, who represents here Paluno and the BDVA, of course. Soron Ewer, who is representing the Leipzig University of Hanover. Ray Walsh, who is from the Dublin City University, and also he's a very important member of the Big Data Standardization Association, and Professor Angelidis, who is an expert on big data for health from the University of Western Macedonia in Thessaloniki. Also from our US counterparts are David Belanger from Stevens Institute of Technology. We have Wo Chang from NIST, working specifically on standardization, and Dr. Michael Blesas from MIT, who is the director of computing there, computing at the MIT Media Lab, also an expert on big data issues, especially related to infrastructure. So, just as a very short overview of the activities, we have implemented a number of activities as an expert group. I will only like to take you through a couple of them. One of our first activities was to go through a number of documents and policy papers drafted by EU and US structures such as the BDVA, NIST, NSF, and other initiatives, or even private reports produced by consulting services and consulting companies in order to define what are the main priorities and technological priorities and application domains between the two regions. The slide you see is a draft, an early draft of that exercise that we did, trying to define which are the most critical priorities from each side, in order to see where and if we have a common ground. As you can see from the slide, for example, issues like energy, smart energy, transport, the whole smart cities issue is something that is very important for both regions, while big data and media, for example, is important for Europe, but was not important for the US counterparts at that stage, or big data technologies and for natural resources and hazards is also something that was considered as critical for the US, but not very critical from the EU side. A parallel activity also that we tried to boost during the PICASSO project was to creating an international community of experts with organizations from both regions, EU and US, of course, in order to boost to boost collaboration and start talking to each other. Of course, this has been done with the great help of the US data hubs, especially Leah Shanley, who is also a speaker today. She has put a lot of effort from their side, from the US side, to bring a lot of these US people in contact with us. I'm sure that she will talk about this in her slides. I have regarding a specific workshop that took place last November in France. So this big data community of experts is EU-US community of people, that individuals that are very knowledgeable both on technologies, big data technologies, of course, policies, etc. And we try to talk to each other and defining the common ground of understanding and common ground of for future collaboration. As it has already been mentioned at the beginning, we have implemented a number of physical and virtual meetings. We have implemented some closed meetings only for the PICASSO expert group members, but we have also had some big data sessions during the first annual Transatlantic Symposium, which was held in Minnesota in 2007. It was a transatlantic workshop for big data, which was initiated, of course, by about the big data innovation hubs, and supported by PICASSO BDVA in India last November in France. And we also have a dedicated session in the second annual Transatlantic Symposium on ICT, tech and policy, which will take place in Washington, D.C. on June 18th, 19th, where a number of speakers from EU and US will present opportunities for collaboration between the two regions. So, the last slide that I have for today, just for a short brief, as a PICASSO expert group, we have developed two proposals for strategic initiatives between EU and US, which have been disseminated to the EU, to the European Commission, and will be presented also in Washington next month. The first initiative proposal that we propose to the Commission is to establish an official big data task force for enhancing collaboration, which will include members from both regions, individuals from both regions, with a number of subgroups. I will not go into detail for each subgroup right now, but these are the subgroups that we would like to focus. These are the application areas, for example, that have been derived from the workshop that took place in France last year. So we've considered them as critical, and also we have proposed to the Commission to consider including a number of technological priorities and technological challenges into the new Horizon 2020, or the new FP9, as you can call it, and try to include these technological themes into the agenda under the EU-US collaboration in order to promote joint funding for technological themes in the new framework program. So that's all from myself. I would like to pass the mic to Andreas to give an overview of BDVA and its activities. And Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vasilis. Good morning to our US colleagues. Good afternoon to the European colleagues. Thank you very much for having me here to speak from the Big Data Value Association's point of view. I'm their Deputy Secretary General, and if you bear with me for the next 10 to 15 minutes, you will also know much more in detail what is the BDVA and what are our activities and how does this relate to any potential opportunities for EU-US collaboration and also funding in particular from the European side. So what I'm going to walk you through is two things. First of all, the structure of the so-called big data public-private partnership, of which the BDVA is one element. And then I picked from the current funding opportunities offered by the European Commission the topics related to big data, and will explain a little bit what they're about and point you to the required information if you want to drill in deeper and get more detailed information. So let's start with the structure overall. So what you see on this slide is something I termed the European Big Data Value Ecosystem. So there's many players, many associations jointly with the European Commission trying to boost and strengthen the big data research and innovation in Europe, strengthen industry, but also engage researchers. In this setting, big data value really means everything related to big data that has a socio-economic impact. So not so much scientific research like large collider experiments, but it's really, can we empower businesses to be more productive, to be more efficient? What you see in this kind of pseudo Venn diagram below is these different elements, which I will walk you through in a little bit more detail. On the top, you see the so-called big data value public-private partnership. That's really a kind of joint venture between the private side, meaning industry in Europe, and the public side. In this case, that's the European Commission and the funding bodies. On the left-hand side, you see the Big Data Value Association, which represents the industry-led private side of this PPP. Below, you see logos of our collaborators, because as you can imagine, big data is not isolated, and also as we see in PICASSO already, you have other topics like 5G, cyber physical systems, IoT, which are all cross-correlated. And then on the right-hand side, you see the so-called Big Data Value iSpaces, which are entities, little laboratories open for big data experimentation. So this is really a kind of infrastructure opportunity, also an ecosystem in itself, bring together data owners, data experimenters, these kind of things. So let me walk you through the various different elements. First of all, the Big Data Value Association, as I mentioned already, is an industry-led association with a focus of gravity in Europe. We currently have something over 180 members from all European countries, with a 55% kind of industry majority. It's also industry-led. Our presidents and vice presidents are mainly from industry. So it's really in line with the industry expectations, and really kind of representing also a lobby activity towards the European Commission. And this really brings me to one of the main, let's say, documents and guiding elements of this Big Data Value Association. That's the so-called Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, SRIA. We release such an agenda yearly, and the important thing, because we're talking here now about collaboration and funding opportunities, is that this SRIA spells out key research or key research and innovation topics, aspects, and challenges, which also find their way in the respective funding calls and funding programs. So it's a helpful background document if you wish to better understand why some of the topics appear where they appear and what they could mean in more detail. As I mentioned in the beginning, I will show you the concrete funding opportunities in the second part of this presentation. One interesting point at this stage, talking about engagement, is the BDVA has an open membership model. This means we basically welcome everybody to our association, with a little caveat, that is, the members have to have a legal presence in at least one of the European countries. European countries, we use the rather broad definition also of the European Commission, means either a EU member state or associated country, such as Norway and Israel, or a candidate country. Unfortunately, this means for our US colleagues, you're not considered a European country, and per se would not be really eligible to become members of the BDVA. So if you want to think about, let's say, engagement on this level, we can check and we can maybe see whether we want to broaden the BDVA ambitions, but for the moment it's really a European association with many collaborations going on, including this PICASSO collaboration and also direct collaborations with our NSF colleagues and the US colleagues. but for the association itself, it's in our bylaws and statutes that we have to have this. Okay, just to make it clear. Otherwise, everybody can join. It's a member fee-based association, so it's self-sustained, and we manage all our activities, workshops, events by membership contributions. The Big Data Value PPP, that's the big umbrella across everything. As I mentioned also already, the public side is represented by the European Commission, who basically has the funding for the projects and activities. And we have the BDVAs, the private side, who's kind of managing, shaping the things. And jointly together, we have set up a kind of research agenda, as I mentioned. And the important thing is, aligned with this research agenda, there are really concrete calls for actions, projects you may watch, under the Horizon 2020 European framework. If you're interested, you can follow this link I put here on the website, which shows you the current projects which are funded under this public-private partnership, because I thought this may be interesting to understand if you're looking for future engagement and opportunities, that you have a feeling for what kind of projects are there, because they're basically there also for the future calls. What you basically have is 4 kinds of projects you see on the lower half of the slide. 2 of them, this is rather quick, is I would say more or less standard. It's the typical collaboration and support actions you have to support the program in itself. There's kind of calls for benchmarking and similar things. You have the typical researchy oriented technical projects focusing, drilling down on specific research topics. And then you have 2 specific types of projects which are really specific for this PPP. The first are the so-called lighthouse projects, or now with the kind of newer labeling, the large-scale pilots and test beds. There the ambition is really to take big data technology applied to sectorial challenges, for example transport, bioeconomy, healthcare, and demonstrate what is possible with big data technology, and thereby also kind of represent a reference example for industry to uptake and replicate what's been done there. The other key types of projects are the so-called data incubators or data platforms, that are really projects trying to set up a trusted environment where data can be shared, used for higher value applications, for example, with a key point that it's a trusted environment where you can have personal or commercial data, and the people using these platforms really have a certain level of guarantees that their data is dealt with in a correct way. Especially important now with the European data protection law being active middle of this month. So this is really some really interesting kinds of projects to set this up. There's various of these where it's domain specific or technology specific. So that's quite interesting area to look for. A little bit related to these kind of data platforms are the so-called big data value iSpaces, short for innovation spaces. They're a little bit more than just the ordinary project who sets up this platform. They're really, as you can see on the right-hand side, more kind of this bring together different aspects from the infrastructure and technical, let's say, elements, but also including skills, business models, and these kind of things. And because we wanted to enrich the European funding landscape with additional opportunities for people to point them to say, okay, these are interesting iSpaces, interesting places to do your big data experiments with. What the BDVA is now doing in the 3rd year is labeling these iSpaces. There's a catalog of criteria, and if you satisfy these criteria, you get a label which is reissued once a year. And this label gives you the kind of, let's say, BDVA recommendation that you address these various concerns you see in this top right corner. I put the current iSpaces down there with the logo, so if you're interested to find out more about that, most of them are country-specific, some of them are cross-European, but it could be interesting if you're really thinking about doing data experimentation and you want to have some infrastructure and tool setups and don't want to set it up yourself, so that's an opportunity to get in touch with these kinds of elements. Okay, final point, I don't go through this in detail. This is the current list of collaborators with the BDVA. This means if you're engaged with BDVA, you also have the opportunity to engage in these kinds of collaborations. and of course also the other way around. And you see kind of all the important topics we have at the moment, with starting with high performance computing to address the size and scale of data, cybersecurity, very important concern, I indicate this a little bit, then Internet of Things, 5G for connectivity, and factories of the future, specific application area. Okay, so that's it for the landscape, for the ecosystem. Now let me give you some more pointers for what are the potential opportunities for collaboration. On the one hand, I mentioned already, there's certain topics which are spelled out in our SRIA and which are also reflected in the European Commission's work program that may be worth having a look at, because many of the calls, many of the activities are really aligned with these technical aspects. And I think these technical aspects don't necessarily come with a big surprise. It's interesting if you look one level down, so if you go to the SRIA and then you read the actual challenges where it gets more specific. But you have the obvious things there: data management, architectures for data processing, different forms of data analytics, predictive, prescriptive, these kind of things. Data visualization, user interaction, new forms of really grasping and making data tangible, and of course data protection, security. What we introduced with the recent release of the SRIA, which was launched last November, is an aspect which so far has not gained lots of interest, but will, in our point of view, gain more interest once you have lots of these technology building blocks available. That's all the questions about how do you engineer these big data systems, how does DevOps, for example, look for big data systems where not only the user requirements may continuously change, but also the availability, kind, quality of data will change continuously. So what kind of agile life cycle you need in such a setting? These are the topics which we're interested there. And then we put it here under technical, but you could also put it under non-technical, the question about big data standardization. Where we are in touch with the colleagues from the US, so from NIST, which are having a big data reference model. We have a simplified version on the European side, and discussions are going on to kind of align and shape this. For the non-technical aspect, skills, a huge concern, I think, on both sides of the Atlantic. The skills gap is getting bigger and bigger with increased digitization. So there's some activities on the BDVA side, on the PPP side, but also complementary on the whole European Commission side to foster the increase in the workforce. And then there's the other kind of non-technical aspects: ecosystems, business models, policy regulation, and how is big data perceived in society, because the term big data has a little negative connotation with all these kind of Facebook, Google, Amazon stories you hear, which are not necessarily the best stories to advertise big data. So this is the angle there. And what we're trying to bring across is that we don't use personal data for, let's say, specific advertising, these kinds of things. We use more the commercial data from digitized processes, from industry equipment, to increase the productivity of industry, to kind of balance a little bit the perceptions. Okay, this slide is a high-level view on what is currently done in the PPP. So this is based on a report from all the ongoing 30+ projects. What is the topics they're addressing? What are they going to address in the future? So this gives you a little bit the focus of gravity. Currently, lots of focus on data management, a very traditional problem. And as you can see, and if you look from left to right in the green area, the future goes more increase in data analytics. So once you have the data management under control, the analytics gets the more interesting traction. Architectures get a huge interest, because we're talking about new kinds of bring together real-time data with batch data processing, these kind of things. And also data protection is on the rise, but you have to be aware here that we have the cybersecurity PPP complementary to the big data PPP. They're looking at these security issues too. So as I said, it's just to give you a feeling where's the focus of gravity at the moment. So if you want to bring in some new perspectives, this would be good to understand where people are working already in the PPP. This slide I will not go through in detail, so don't be shocked. This is the second level of the kind of topics which are addressed. You find these also in the SRIA document I pointed out at the beginning. So if you're interested, you probably have the slides afterwards also. You can also see in more detail what are the specific challenges currently being addressed in the projects and which are the challenges which may not be addressed yet, which may not be so interesting. So that's an analysis we're currently doing, but at least you see where the major activity level is going on. Okay, so that's it for the point of view of the topics. So if you're thinking about what could be big data topics we want to engage in, this hopefully gives you some better understanding of what things we're looking for, what things people are working already on. And now to the kind of actual, let's say, more concrete engagement opportunities. In simple terms, can we have joint projects, for example, between EU and US, and can we get some funding? So for looking at the funding opportunities, there's the so-called ICT work program, or Leadership in Industrial Technologies work program. And I put the link here, but you can easily find it by Google search. Because this session here is about US-EU collaboration, there's the general kind of framework for these kinds of collaborations in whole of Horizon 2020 funding program, which means US researchers, enterprises, institutions can always be part of European projects, so they can work together, they can do research together, but they will not get money from the European side, which is of course a little bit a kind of makes things a little bit more difficult. There's some isolated cases, for example in healthcare, where there's an agreed collaboration between EU and US, and you can get joint funding from, I think, NIS and then European Commission. But this is not the area I'm talking about now, so if you're interested in that, you have to look for the specific work program on health. In general, you find more detail and more information on that, but this is really just the let's say, ground rules. You can be in joint projects, but you will not get the money from the European side. For what you're doing, you have to look for local funds on the US side. Now looking at the concrete calls for the PPP project, what I put here on the slides is the same picture you saw before. But now in addition, I put the call topics, so they're always numbered. So because we're talking about the ICT call, the ICT work program, you have the ICT, and then you have a number. Let's say for the lighthouses, it's ICT 11 or ICT 14, followed by the year in which the calls are released, and you can submit the proposals. So all the calls you see here have 2018 opportunities. This means the call will be launched during this year, and they close next April, so April 2019. So this helps you to navigate the work program text, because it's not only about big data, there's also IoT and other topics, so this is kind of a little service from our side to point you to the relevant things in big data there. Another little kind of caveat in all these things here is most of the big data calls, starting with the recent work program, have introduced a specific clause which I put there on the bottom, which is interesting to know beforehand before you engage in such kind of projects, especially if you are a US company, US partner, even though if you have a strong base in Europe. The little clause is that the European Commission may object to transfer or licensing of the results of the project. So this means if your EU project created some IPR, intellectual property, and you want to license this across the Atlantic to US companies, strictly speaking, the European Commission would have a veto right to say yes or no that you can do so. I was talking to a couple of colleagues from IBM, and they were able to find a solution with their lawyers to make this not as critical as it sounds, but that's explicitly put in the work program, so I thought it's just fair to let you know that you should check before you engage, because this may be a downer for some of the ambitions, unfortunately. Okay. Final slide is if you want to meet us in person and engage with the people from the BDVA, there's upcoming opportunities. One is already next week, so this may be a very short notice, but maybe for some of our colleagues from Europe, that's an easy thing to do. So there's the so-called Big Data Value Meetup in Sofia, with the first 2 days where the projects present and engage, and there's a third day, a public day, where you see the activities of the BDVA, where many of the BDVA players and stakeholders will take place. And the more interesting, a little bit longer term event, and also a bigger event with much more public traction, is the European Big Data Value Forum, which will take place November 12 to 14 in Vienna, Austria. We don't have the program online yet, so it's basically a save the date, but it's a very cordial invite to join us there for concrete collaboration opportunities. All right, so that's it from my side, and thank you very much. I think we have a Q&A session at the end, if there's no questions immediately. Okay, then I give back to you, Vasilis.
Speakers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andreas. It was a great presentation. I think the next on the line is Florence. Hi, Florence.
Hi, Vasilis. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for having us join you from the U.S. and for speaking with us kind of in the summer in the afternoon on a Friday. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm the Special Advisor for Next Generation Internet for the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub, which is one of the big data hubs that the U.S. National Science Foundation has funded in the U.S. And two of our other hubs are on the phone with us. Will I be able to forward these charts? Yes, I can. Okay, excellent. So also on the line is Leah Shanley, who is the person that Vasilis was talking about that has been leading our collaboration across the pond. And so they've graciously added me in as a special advisor on Next Generation Internet following the meeting in Versailles that was discussed in the fall of last year. Leah's a co-executive director of the South Big Data Innovation Hub, and she will be doing a number of updates. Meredith Lee is at our West Hub, and she can't be with us this morning, but we do have some of her materials and from her team. And then Renata Rawlings-Gose is on as well, and she's the other co-executive director of the South Big Data Regional Innovation Hub, working very closely with Leah. So their bios have been on the agenda for a while, and you have all this material. So let's jump in. You know, we're so excited because we've identified so many opportunities for collaboration. And as you can see, just between the three of us, between myself, Renata, and Leah, we actually represent a number of institutions. The Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub is headquartered out of Columbia University in New York. Our executive director, Renee Baston. Renata, as co-executive director of the South Hub, is at Georgia Tech, Georgia Institute of Technology. Its nickname is Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. And then Leah is at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is what the CH is, and involved in the Renaissance Computing Initiative, RENCI, as well, in North Carolina. So we've identified 2 full pages of innovation opportunities for collaboration we're going to talk about. Leah is going to talk about an overview of the NSF Big Data Innovation Hubs, the 4 hubs that we have around the country, what we do, talk a little bit about the Cross Big Data Hub Cyber Infrastructure Working Group, which meets rather often, and we discuss opportunities in leveraging high-performance computing and other applications, solutions, software, and resources for big data. And then a little follow-up on the Transatlantic Symposium on Public-Private Partnerships for Big Data that was held in Versailles in the fall after a lot of collaboration, which was wonderful. Then Renata is going to join us and talk about the Cross Big Data Hub Data Science Education Initiatives, and then within Smart and Connected Cities, talk about Internet of Things for smart and connected cities and campuses, and workshops and initiatives that she has been working on. Can you still hear me? I heard another voice. Okay, hopefully it's okay. So then we're going to talk a little bit about the Global Smart Cities Team Challenge and a transportation data challenge we're involved with. Then Leah is going to continue after those couple of topics she's going to help with and talk about the South Hub Social Cybersecurity Working Group. And then I'm going to go over 4 initiatives regarding cybersecurity. I've been fortunate to be involved with the National Science Foundation as a PI on a couple of grants in the SATSI space. We call it the Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace. And so I work rather closely with the NSF cybersecurity community, and I'll talk about the Cybersecurity Summit occurring this summer in Alexandria, Virginia. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Next Generation Internet Collaboration that we're very delighted to be participating with the PICASSO team in their solicitation, and Think Nexus, I believe it is. And then I'll talk a little bit about the ICE-T solicitation from the U.S. National Science Foundation, which is complementary to the NGI solicitation in the EU. And then an opportunity that I'd like to invite you or your friends and colleagues to participate in on Next Generation Internet for Healthcare panel, which will take place at Columbia University in New York City in October. And then we'll talk about some ongoing collaboration opportunities regarding what's going on with RDA, the Research Data Alliance, the Research Data Science Summer School, and the European Open Science Cloud, where we'd like to continue our collaboration. So, you know, Vasilis and the team, we have to thank you for asking us to present, because it allowed us to find all these great opportunities for collaboration, which we're really delighted about. Now I'd like to hand it over to Leah, and she will present some of the next few slides.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Nikos and Vasilis and all who invited us to participate in this webinar. I appreciate it. So I'm Leah Shanley. As Florence mentioned, I'm one of the 2 co-executive directors of the South Big Data Innovation Hub. I'm based at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and my counterpart, Renata Rawlings-Goss, who also will be presenting today, is at Georgia Tech. The Big Data Innovation Hubs are a network of 4 innovation hubs launched by the National Science Foundation in the U.S. in partnership with our host universities. So the South Hub, as I mentioned, is at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Georgia Tech. The Northeast Hub is based at Columbia University, and the director is René Beston. The Midwest Hub, and it looks like the dot is off, but it's in Illinois, Urbana-Champaign at the university there, and Melissa Cragen is the executive director. And then Meredith Lee is the executive director of the West Hub, and she's based at Berkeley, and they have 2 deputies there, Sarah Stone at University of Washington and Christine Kirkpatrick at University of California, San Diego. So the role of the hubs is to build and strengthen partnerships across industry, academia, nonprofits, and government to address societal and scientific challenges, to spur economic development, and accelerate innovation in the big data ecosystem. We are regionally focused as well as work as a network of networks for national initiatives. And as Nikos alluded to, over the last year, we've been building some collaborations with the Big Data Value Association, the PICASSO Big Data Expert Group, and INRIA, which we're excited about. We have, in the South, we have 1,200 members across the South region, which includes everything from Texas to Delaware. And I believe there's similar membership numbers in each of the other 3 hubs. We have a number of working groups across the hubs and communities of practice or communities of interest, and would greatly welcome European participation and collaboration in those groups. As Florence mentioned, we have a working group on data sharing and cyber infrastructure. So the hubs have been working to open up some of the private sector data for the research community to use, and also have been showcasing some of the core components that would be in a federated data cyber infrastructure, and they are now moving to perhaps develop some test beds and do some mapping of resources, data, tools, and software. We have, across all the hubs, different smart cities communities, and as I'll talk about shortly, we have a transportation initiative, smart and connected health, digital agriculture, environment and hazards, water data science, and we have a workshop coming up on that. Renata's going to talk about data science education, data literacy, privacy and ethics, particularly data ethics is becoming a hot topic here in the US, and the hubs are beginning to address that, starting with the West Hub as well as the other hubs. We have a cybersecurity working group, or two cybersecurity working groups, which I'll mention later in the presentation, data visualization community of practice, and big data and advanced manufacturing, just to name a few. We have several partnerships with the cloud providers, so Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Microsoft, for example, has given the hubs $3 million in cloud compute credits, has offered free trainings around the country at each of the hubs, as well as some technical support in getting folks started. We have partnerships with many of the U.S. federal agencies and their data science teams, including NASA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, our U.S. Department of Transportation, our U.S. Department of Agriculture, our Geological Survey, etc., as well as numerous private sector collaborators, including RTI International, which I think has been active as well with the PICASSO team, as well as some startup or entrepreneurial companies. We have a big data PI meeting coming up the 3 days after the PICASSO project, so if anyone is interested in participating in that meeting, please let me know. We have a few seats available for European collaborators. And some of the cross-hub initiatives that I'm not going to go into depth today that might be of interest is the discussion of the need for a data science core, so getting students and early career professionals to be embedded in companies, in communities, and NGO, nonprofit organizations to build data science capacity. Next slide. Towards our international collaboration, we held a workshop in collaboration with the Big Data Value Association, Andreas and Arnie Berry, and Nikos and Vasilis and others from the PICASSO project, as well as SRIA. That meeting was held in Versailles in conjunction with the Big Data Value Annual Meeting. We brought in about 50 folks, 25 from the US, 25 from the EU, including data scientists, researchers, clinicians, economists, and many more disciplines. The event marked, I think, an important step in continuing to build a productive EU-US relationship for advancing data science. Participants sketched out a vision for applying big data to benefit society and cultivating a workforce capable of fulfilling this vision. And that report will be published in the next 2 months. We're right now have it out for review. The workshop uncovered potential synergies between the two regions, offered insights relevant to prioritizing future research investments, and yielded, I think, promising leads for potential jointly funded projects to propel research and innovation. And as Nikos and Andreas pointed out, unfortunately, there aren't funding opportunities at this moment through the NSF and EU, but around data science. But that's something that we've had discussions with our NSF program officers here and introduced them to some of the EU commissioners to begin that conversation. Some of the areas that were highlighted included smart and connected health. So how can we incorporate machine learning advancements to automate clinical documentation, perform metadata analysis on electronic health records data quality, which could inform data model standardization. How do we incorporate artificial intelligence techniques to improve data sparsity amid disadvantaged populations, for example, were some of the areas that the participants of the workshop thought might be ripe for collaboration between the US and EU. Privacy and security was another area, low-cost sensor development, data science education and workforce. And some of the next steps that we hope to take include things like this webinar, so beginning to set up some virtual meetings that will connect our US big data and data science researchers and hub researchers with, for example, the Lighthouse projects and the Big Data Value Association and other PICASSO project-led initiatives. and perhaps, hopefully, some future workshops. I do have a small amount of money to bring some researchers over for a follow-up meeting, but we certainly could be applying to do additional. With that, I'll pass it to Renata, I think. Yes.
Hi, Renata.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for having me. So I'm Renata Rawlings-Goss, the other co-executive director of the South Hub, and I'm talking to you today about some of our data science education and workforce activities that we have undergone in the South Hub, but also as cross-hub initiatives involving a large number of partners, academic and industry as well. So the goal of the working group, so I'm the chair of our Education and Workforce Development Working Group, is to collect and provide practical resources and models of engagement for not only broadening but also deepening the available pool of data literate talent. So these are our 4 areas of emphasis, and there's a number of projects that fall under this group, which you can find out more about on the South Hub website and as part of our working group. So one of the things is looking at institutional outreach, so really best practices and also shared experiences for data science programs within academia. So that has resulted in several things. One is a data science education network, so kind of connecting institutions that are either have established programs or are in the process of creating these programs and collecting and sharing their use cases. Also a workshop that was held last November that really focused on broadening the institution types, so looking at 4-year liberal arts colleges as well as community colleges, as well as minority serving institutions that can start programs where a lot of the workforce may be actually coming from in conjunction with the more research-focused academic institutions. And so through that, we've been offering some half-day workshops that also could be extended across the into the EU as well, because we have been talking with the Edison project about skills. So one is workshops around how best practices on how to set up these programs that are usually held at academic institutions. But then also ones at industry locations looking at things like data teams or talent and kind of innovative ways of recruitment, of doing a data science recruitment around the skills that have been seen to be needed by the Edison project as well. So we also do faculty development, these short-term fellowships or boot camps that help build skills in faculty or connect them with industry and government partners so that they can do short-term fellowships to really understand what is going on inside of the company, get a handle on their data, on their expertise that are there in the company, so that then these research collaborations can be more fruitful, knowing what is actually happening on both sides. So this has been extremely helpful because then industry partners have felt more empowered to engage in funding academic research and in hiring students that have worked on these projects. So the third one is the resource development, which is this amplifying, expanding, and connecting existing efforts. So this is just an effort for the group to also look at outside grants. Right now the grants we're looking at are from U.S. federal agencies, and they've been awarded to a number of PIs across our region that look at things that we can help them bolster and support existing efforts that are happening. So there's NSF Includes, where some of those we're going to help them amplify their mission to plug some of the holes in the pipeline for getting people all the way from undergraduate through to PhD, but also through to the workforce in different pathways, and how people don't, reducing the leakage in that pipeline. And the fourth one is the workforce landscape. So looking at primarily now U.S. industry and government, and doing some assessment or some initial assessment to look at what is the current landscape of workforce, where are people looking for talent, and can those available pools be grown, or also are there different mechanisms that can be leveraged? One such could be, as Leah mentioned, doing something like a data core or connecting in various ways. So through the last webinar for the Keeping Data Science Broad, we brought in a speaker from the Edison project to talk to the different institutions, as well as alternative programs interested in education, about the skills assessment that they've done through industry in the EU, and then also reached out to Singapore when their office around more so smart city, or what they would call smart country initiatives, but that also include an education and workforce. So if you're interested in any of these things or connecting, I think our information is at the end. You can reach out to me, or also to Kendra Strickland, who is my program coordinator here, about getting involved or wanting to see some additional things from the workshops. Also, we're wanting to talk briefly about our Internet of Things and smart and connected cities and campuses. So this was a workshop that I held last year in April, which was a mix of cities coming, industry, government, on the federal level, as well as campuses, with the idea that really campuses, the university campuses, could be used as a microcosm or a pilot for a city, and that a lot of the things that are deployed as far as our IoT could be used as test cases on larger university campuses, which essentially have some of the same services as cities. They have public transit, they have police departments, they have all of the things. They have crime and facilities maintenance, and so can these be used as test beds or as case studies for things that could be scaled up to city level? So the results of this was one case study has been published already by Internet2, looking at IoT in the gym facilities and for student project planning. So looking at how students can connect via an app and see when specific things are open in the different facilities, where they can go, how it fits in their class schedule, and writing up what the pros and cons of those types of interactions are. And I know that Internet2 was also very interested in smart campuses and has a smart campus network for looking at how to build up these things on university campuses, as well as MetroLab, which is connecting university campuses and their local cities in a more formalized relationship, so that that knowledge can be transferred between the university as an engine of innovation for the city, but then also as a piloting place for their own initiatives on campus. Similarly, there's an interest at the federal level as well, and industry partners clearly have interest in this, from smart cities as well as a customer base on campus. So with that, I think, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. But we can move on back to Leah to talk about the Cross Hub Initiative, which is the National Transportation Data Challenge.
Renata, before you run,
thank you, Renata.
I was wondering if
yeah, so you can reach out to Renata on the education front, but I also will mention that the Northeast Hub has a data literacy working group, and the West Hub and Midwest Hubs are also have data science education activities. So I think the hubs have been a good resource for that effort. The Transportation Data Challenge is an effort.
Sorry, Leah, there's somebody who was going to ask a question just before I left, because I have to go after this. My apologies.
I know. Yeah, so this is Florence. I was thinking, since you do have to go, maybe we can just stop for a minute and see if there are any questions, specifically for what Renata presented on the data science education and the Internet of Things and smart cities and campus. She can't be on after about another 10 or 15 minutes. So are there any questions so far? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And Renata, thanks for fitting this all in today.
Yeah, thank you. And thank everybody that, has joined the call.
Thank you, Leah. Take it away.
Okay, so thanks, Renata. So the Transportation Data Challenge is one example in which the hubs have worked across networks. Then All Hub National Transportation Data Challenge is an example of a vertical effort. It brings together stakeholders from across many sectors to focus on a big data challenge with societal impact. And we were focused on how might we reduce traffic fatalities. Here in the United States, fatalities have increased significantly, just a dramatic leap in the last 2 years. The challenge is not your typical weekend hackathon, but a sustained series of community problem-solving sessions. We did organize hackathons, but also roundtable discussions involving policy experts, workshops, chats, or webinars with the U.S. Department of Transportation Chief Data Officer, and as well as hands-on demos and with Jupyter Notebooks. There was an in-person or online opportunity to engage in this effort every 2 to 3 weeks over the course of 6 to 8 months, encompassing more than 10 cities in the U.S. Partnerships were built around open data and tool sharing, and commitments were made by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Waze, SRIA, which is the big mapping firm, O'Reilly, datascience.com, and many other private sector partners. The National Summit, which was launched in 2016, now announced additional commitments that will be continuing for the next 2 years. So I encourage you all, if you're interested in participating in that, you can go to bigdatahubs.io. Next slide. While not a hubs activity, I do want to draw your attention, if you're not already familiar, with Soku Ri's fantastic Global City Team Initiative, our Team Challenge, which comes out of our National Institute for Standards and Technology. That's an effort to establish and demonstrate replicable, scalable, and sustainable models for incubation and deployment of interoperable, secure, standard-based solutions using advanced technologies such as Internet of Things, cyber-physical systems, to demonstrate their measurable benefits in cities and communities. And right now, they've partnered with our Department of Homeland Security to focus on Smart and Secure Cities and Communities Challenge, which looks at cybersecurity and privacy. And so the link is there if folks are interested in participating in that. One of the areas where the hubs is increasing its focus is in cybersecurity. Privacy and security are critical for realizing big data's promise to advance society. And if data are used without regard to privacy of individuals or protection of the data, then individuals may be harmed. If the data's authenticity is not guaranteed, or if the data are not permitted to be used at all due to privacy and security restrictions, on the other hand, the data's value may not be realized. So the Northeast Big Data Hub's working group is focused on privacy and security of big data, with a focus on safe collection and sharing of cybersecurity data, and interest in helping to connect the data science and cybersecurity community with the insurance industry. The South Hub, on the other hand, has a working group on security, network analysis, and social media, and we're working to advance a research agenda on social cybersecurity, or what's called cognitive hacking and cognitive security. So non-state actors, extremists, and terrorist groups have quite effectively harnessed modern communication platforms to influence mass thinking, manipulate discourse, fabricate perceptions, and create mayhem. So our working group, we have about 30 researchers, and it's growing rapidly, is focused on developing a research agenda for social cybersecurity to build a community of interested researchers and practitioners to exchange, learn, and develop new ideas in this space, and develop a collaborative platform for resources, tools, and data. I think the Northeast Hub is doing similar kinds of activities, but with a somewhat different focus. The South Hub meets monthly and includes presentations on cutting-edge research, and the group recently had a workshop to scope out what would be included in a collaboration platform that would work to raise all boats, as we say, in this research space. And with that, I hand it over to Florence.
Sorry, is there some technical problem? I'm supposed to speak now? Vasilis, can you hear us?
Yes, I just managed to hear you, yes.
Yeah, so apparently we cannot hear somebody.
Well, I don't know. Florence, are you talking? I don't know who.
Yeah, Florence, can you hear us? I don't know. Yes, no, okay, Florence, we cannot hear you. Can you check the volume of your microphone? So I will give you, because apparently your microphone was deactivated. Now you can try speaking.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, now yes. Perhaps it's a bit low, the volume. If you go on the green icon and you click on the little arrow, you can even adjust your volume if you want. But now we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me well enough now, or does it need to be louder?
Could be louder, to be honest, yeah.
I don't see another way to make this louder right now. Let me see here. It's all the way at the top. It's at 100%.
There is a little arrow heading down. If you push that, there is just microphone volume. But if you otherwise.
Okay, one minute. Let me put my headset on.
Yeah.
Maybe that will help. Is that better?
Yeah, better. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'll speak loudly into my headset.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So now we're on the chart regarding a number of EU-US big data opportunities, and starting with cybersecurity. So every summer, recently, we've been having a cybersecurity summit sponsored by the U.S. National Science Foundation, and I'm fortunate to be on the program committee this year. and it will take place in August in Alexandria, Virginia, right near the new U.S. National Science Foundation headquarters. They just moved there recently. And there's an opportunity to present and collaborate. I'll tell you a little bit more on the next page. We have the links in all of these as well so you can see. Last year we actually had some colleagues from the EU join, including one of Hannah Short from CERN, as some of you know her. She's a security fellow at CERN. People from a number of other organizations, research and education organizations around the EU. And they actually had a separate workshop, which could be something you could request as well. Then I'll talk a little bit about the opportunity we had, which we're very grateful for, to enable collaboration on the next generation internet proposal from the Horizon 2020 effort, which was submitted at the end of March. And we provided letters of support from 10 institutions in the U.S., for particular working with the PICASSO team, from academia, industry, not-for-profit entities. And then I'll talk a little bit about the complementary solicitation from the U.S. National Science Foundation called ICE-T, or Internet Core and Edge Technologies, and those proposals were due earlier this month. And then I'll go a little bit further into the opportunity to have additional EU participants in a workshop, a large conference. We're expecting about 800 people in New York City in October regarding telehealth in medicine and blockchain in healthcare. I happen to be on the editorial board for blockchain in healthcare today, and I'd like to invite more EU participants to join us. So proceeding a little bit more about the Cybersecurity Summit. The purpose is to provide information security training and workshops tailored to increase the NSF community's understanding of cybersecurity strategies that can strengthen trustworthy science. What data, processes, and systems are crucial to the scientific mission, what risks they face, and how to protect them. How to protect the data, how to protect the instruments. There have been feelings for a while that scientific instruments, such as a large telescope that might be its only type on the planet, are not as prone to cybersecurity attacks. But for those of you who might be familiar with when the neutron star collision occurred earlier this year, the telescope in Australia, the server managing it actually was hacked, and they could not move it from afar, and they had to drive there to change things. So as we know, everything is vulnerable. So there's an opportunity to talk about cybersecurity for large facilities and cyber infrastructure, and to join this collaboration. There are presentation proposal opportunities. You can present those and submit them by June 13th. In the following focus areas for the plenary sessions or the large conference sessions, panel presentations. There are also separate training sessions you could have, as I mentioned, some of our EU colleagues in this group called WISE, W-I-S-E, which is an embedded acronym. It stands for WISE Information Security for Connected Infrastructures, and it's led out of the EU. They actually had their own workshop there. And then we have table topics for smaller conversations around a table. And the topical areas we're looking for presenters on are science challenges and solutions, including security frameworks, regulation, integrity, and availability. Also in accountability, risk acceptance, and the role of project leadership. Also software assurance and cloud computing strategies and experiences. So if you'd like to look at the call for participation, the link is at the bottom, and you can always reach out to me for further information as well. Next was the wonderful opportunity we were very grateful for in collaborating on the ICT 31-2018 proposal with the Think Nexus group. And thank you very much, Vasilis and Nikos and the team for including us. We reached out far and wide across the United States, and were able to provide 7 letters of support from 10 entities, including a joint letter of support from the 4 big data innovation hubs. As Leah was mentioning, there are 4 regional hubs, but they work as one team, which is really wonderful. And so we provided a joint letter of support. We also had letters of support from regional networks in the different states in the U.S. and network operation centers. Also, non-governmental organizations such as US Ignite, which works on smart cities and communities, and centers of excellence in different areas, a couple of universities, as well as industry partners. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, as we say. We wish much success for it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to really collaborate as a larger community on defining the next generation internet needs. And so those proposals were presented, sent to the EU at the end of March. The complementary solicitation from the National Science Foundation is called ICE-T, Internet Core and Edge Technologies, and the proposals for that were due May 7th. And the goal here is to enable US and EU researchers to collaborate, to really get into the research, not so much at the collaboration and workshop level, which was more what I think the first Horizon 2020 proposal that we were involved in, but this is actually addressing bespoke, compelling research challenges in next generation internet and advanced wireless networking, which they call AWN, aligned with the EC's Horizon 2020 program. There were 3 areas of funding opportunities that were available. One is research collaboration. It could be ongoing research collaboration. Then there's research collaboration initiation, where there was no collaboration before, and creating a new collaboration. And then also research fellowships for students in the U.S. And in some cases for U.S. institutions, students in U.S.-based institutions that also have campuses elsewhere on the planet. And they would have fellowships with counterpart EU investigators. And so those proposals were submitted earlier in May. We looked at that as our team, and the requirement was that the PIs and co-PIs be full professors and researchers in educational institutions. So I know some people who were involved in the solicitation and submitting proposals, but those of us on the phone were not. So the other opportunity we discussed briefly was to participate in a panel that I'm just starting to put together on next generation internet for healthcare. And this is at a conference, as I mentioned, October 24th at Columbia University in New York City on telehealth and medicine today and blockchain and healthcare today. They're calling the conference Converge to Accelerate because it's between telehealth and blockchain. And the group that runs it, Partners in Digital Health, will have this full day of concurrent meetings between the two sides, telehealth and blockchain, expecting up to 800 senior executives and industry experts to discuss the most compelling issues, growth opportunities, and financial and, I would say, outcome-based implications for healthcare. We already have over 60 people signed up to present. We have speakers not just from the U.S., but if you go to the link, you can look at the list. We have speakers from Great Britain, from Canada, from the UAE, from Netherlands, and from India. And we do want this to be an international event. So if you know of anybody that would like to be on a panel to discuss next generation internet for healthcare, what the needs are, whether it's for genomic data transfers between countries, or it's for wearables and medical interoperability, or it's for the types of technology we could leverage, or the distributed big data and analytics challenges in precision oncology or precision medicine, I would be very interested in hearing from them. And so my contact information is at the end and has been on a number of pages here as well. Now we'd like to review a few of the things that our West Hub counterparts shared with us. The two people that Leah mentioned, or two of the three in the West, Meredith and Christine, actually had other commitments today, and so they were sorry they couldn't join us, but they provided a lot of great data on research collaboration and other collaboration opportunities. So first is RDA, the Research Data Alliance, which many of you probably know of and may participate in already, because there already are cross-Atlantic and research and connections via RDA, but we want to continue leveraging those and creating new ones as appropriate. and where groups exist around specific data innovation topics to leverage these connections further. So as you see opportunities to do that, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us to discuss how we can help. Regarding the European Open Science Cloud, the hubs, the NSF, the US Big Data hubs are very interested in collaborating as new calls are put out. And it could be that there may be some new Big Data hub proposals through the Future Internet initiatives that would be very complementary to this. So if anybody wants to open a dialogue about that, we can connect you to Christine in the West Hub, who is very interested in this. Under the Go Fair principles of findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data, of course, the international office is in the EU, and we're just establishing the first Go Fair US office, but NIH, or the National Institutes of Health, already has a FAIR focus, and there are some requirements for that in their newer solicitations. What we could do is explore joint training and awareness projects around meeting Horizon 2020's FAIR data requirements. Another interesting opportunity is the Research Data Science Summer School. And what we could do between the EU and US is partner to bring these CoData RDA Data Science Summer School programs to more EU countries and US states. If you go to their website, some of you may have participated already. There have been some already, and there are a couple more planned that are on the agenda in Italy, as you can see here. But there could be an opportunity regarding data science education to actually further these, which we would be very happy to talk about. So that's what we had to share with you today. We've gone through, I think, about 15 opportunities for collaboration. And as Leah shared with you, we have these 4 hubs, and then the hubs are affiliated with numerous spoke proposals. The idea when they created the hubs and spokes was to make it like a wheel, where the hub is the middle of the wheel and the spoke projects are the actual subject-specific research efforts that go on, and the hub helps them to collaborate in public-private partnerships and across the hubs. I guess 4 hubs like on a car. So you have 4 wheels and then you go forward together. So there's multiple opportunities there. We'd be happy to share, any things that you think would be helpful. You see on this page in the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub, Renee Baston is our executive director. I'm a senior advisor on Next Generation Internet and other things. And then Katie Naum is a coordinator of everything that they do. The South Hub, you heard from Leah today, and Renata, the co-executive directors. Carl Gustafsson is project manager and very involved in those cyber infrastructure calls that Leah mentioned. And then Kendra is going to be helping out a lot for Renata as a program coordinator. So you could also reach out to Kendra Lewis-Strickland. In the Midwest Hub, we have Melissa Cragen. She couldn't join us today, but if there's something going on in the Midwest of the U.S., she's in Illinois. She could help with that, and she has been involved in collaborations. I know we were discussing genomic data transfers last year between the Midwest, Canada, and Europe. And in the West, we have Meredith Lee, who's the ED, with 2 deputy directors, Christine and Sarah. So that's what we had to share with you today. And it's really been wonderful to listen to everything you have going on, and to hear the collaborative culture that we already have and we would like to continue to pursue. So I'd like to hand it back over to Vasilis, or whoever's going to take over now for questions.
Thanks a lot, Florence, and thanks a lot, Leah and Renata, for your presentation from the US side. It's been a real pleasure hearing from you and identifying all these all these opportunities from your side. That I believe there is a good match between EU and US on this subject. I'm also pretty sure that there is a common ground with the BDVA as well. However, there are some minor issues that we have to overcome, such as I think Andreas already mentioned it, such as trying to open BDVA to US counterparts, for example, something which is not feasible right now due to the nature of BDVA, the legal structure, I mean. But also there is a great opportunity between...
That said, The hubs are open to everybody.
Legally, you mean as a legal structure? We can join, for example, the hubs as a legal structure.
Yep, you can, and there's no membership fees at this time.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. Because from the BDVA you have to be located in Europe. Andreas, please correct me if I'm wrong. You have to be located in Europe, or at least have your operations here. Here, I mean, in Europe. Maybe I'm wrong, but Andreas, you can back me up if I'm mistaken in this.
Yeah, well, that may be for the BDVA, but the big data hubs were open.
That's great. And indeed, for the BDVAs I mentioned, there's statutes. You have to have a legal presence in Europe to be a member. That's the one requirement.
What the?
But we have also seen that there are some also opportunities between organizations. For example, the example of Think Nexus, that we try to engage not only the hubs but also individual organizations from the US, and I'm sure that there will be an opportunity for from a second for another there will be another opportunity for doing the same thing, following the same pattern, let's say, for enhancing collaboration. These are some of the issues that I think that are really critical, really important. And as already mentioned from a number of speakers, the lack of joint funding is something that we all need to consider, and we all need to put pressure on our policy, let's say, makers, in order to try to find some joint funding for implementing activities specifically between EU and US. It used to be the case before and in the previous European framework programs, but now it's not the case, unfortunately. We're putting effort. I know that BDVA is putting effort on this, and we as PICASSO are putting effort on this, on open funding for US counterparts, not only the health domain, which is right now it's open, but to the other domains as well, like big data, like NGI or other topics.
And as you say, Vasilis, you've all been wonderful at collaborating with us, and inviting us to participate. So where you see an opportunity to add value by working more together, just let us know, and then you all can make sure that we fit into the proper guidelines as appropriate, whether it's a side meeting like we did for the Transatlantic Partnership Workshop or whatever is appropriate. All our hearts are in the right place, but we want to make sure that we're abiding by the proper rules.
Yes, definitely. And I think the example of the transatlantic workshop that took place November 2017 in France was a great example. I mean, that workshop over there was something that proved that the physical interactions between individuals is more powerful, of course, than online interactions, and that when we sit on the same around the same table, we can produce very valuable outcomes and ideas to be shared with the community out there, the policymakers, and try to shift the recent trend of isolating from each other to shift this trend from isolation to cooperation.
Absolutely, because we can think together when we're sitting together, right? We think, we listen, we think, we look up and say, and that's very valuable.
Definitely, yes. I don't know if there are any questions for the speakers or any additional comments that you would like to make, or any of the participants would like to raise at this.
This is Leah. I'd be really interested to hear from any participants who might comment on opportunities they see for collaboration between the EU and US.
Yeah, if somebody requested the ability to speak, now that's fine. You are allowed speaking if you raise your hand. What, I don't know.
In the meantime, just let me remind to everyone that there is a physical symposium on June 17th in Washington, in DC, where we will have a big data session over there. Some of the speakers will also participate there, like Leah, Andreas will also be present as well. We will keep you posted through our social media Picasso accounts and through the Picasso website as soon as we have the agenda, the final agenda, because the symposium is a 2-day symposium covering a number of topics: IoT, 5G, cybersecurity, policy are only some of them, and is being organized with another EU project called BILAT 2. So just keep this in mind. We will share more information with you after the webinar whenever we have the agenda and additional logistic information.
So that's fine. If you share unmute your microphone on the top of the screen, it has to become green. You are given speaking right now. You are allowed to speak, but you have to activate your microphone just on the icon on the top. In case, you can pose your question writing in the chat. Okay. So, Vasilis, I think we don't get to interact correctly. If anybody has problem in speaking, you can still write in the chat and we will consider your question and we take it into. Felicia, so apparently no further questions. Vasilis, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So apparently there are no further questions. I don't see any further question on the common chat? Shall I give you the floor? Do you want to?
Just to let everyone know that you can, please, you can also post your questions. Send us your questions through email. You will have our information in the respective presentation, which will be uploaded. The final version will be uploaded on PICASSO website. Also, a version of this webinar will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. So you can visit it and refresh your knowledge or your know-how on this. And please don't forget to follow us on our social media, PICASSO ICT1 in Twitter, the same in LinkedIn. We have a group that you can follow. Margot, I don't know if you want to add anything about Crossroads or.
No, Crossroads, just know that this is one of the main results and tools produced by the project, and is available on the website. You can download it, and of course also in the App Store and Google Play, because it's an application and also a web tool. Which contains all our selection of mutual opportunities, so to access EU opportunities from the US and vice versa, if you want to have a look at it. Vasily?
Okay, so from my side, thank you very much for your participation or your attendance. Even if you didn't have any questions, I'm sure that some questions will arrive through email over the next days. Thank you all for being part of this, and for the speakers of the final symposium, see you in a couple of weeks, in 4 weeks from now, actually, in DC. For the rest, enjoy your weekend. If you are in Europe, enjoy your night. If you are in the US, enjoy your Friday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
Goodbye to all.
Bye-bye.